What up, y'all? It's your boy, One Sir Grove, checking in with the audience globally, worldwide. I hope everyone is having a pleasant day or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Because, as you know, and as I always say at the beginning of each and every one of these podcasts, this is episode 10, by the way. It could be day, it could be night, or somewhere in between, depending on where you are in the world. Today, this evening's topic is that this is gaining traction in terms of a podcast, and it has become quickly successful. You know, it's interesting, man. American business the American way, the American success story. I'm excited, man. I really am, because I checked the stats today. And so just to give you a very quick backstory, this is 495 casting celebrities worldwide. Now, why do I say that? Because, believe it or not, though I just recently started this podcast, just kind of on a whim. I was like, you know what, man, I'm going to start a new podcast. I've done other podcasts in the past. I actually used to record the Sexy Voices of Hollywood with Yayoi Winfrey, which we've done season 1 and season 2. And I would say that was a relatively successful, first 2 seasons, man. It actually did okay, man. Like, I wouldn't say that it did poorly. People have seen the videos. We interviewed Karen Parsons, who plays Hillary Banks who played Hillary Banks on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And we interviewed Forrest Whitaker's brother, Damon Whitaker, and many other individuals in Hollywood, man, and upcomers, people who are getting their feet in the door, fresh start, rising stars, celebrities, VIPs, you name it. And so that did really well, man. Sexy Voices of Hollywood, SVOH. If you haven't checked out any of that, man, do yourself a favor, check it out, man. You might be surprised. So, having interviewed Hollywood stars and celebrities and rising stars, I said to myself, and by the way, I also did DDT Radio, the United Kingdom's DDT Radio, UK's DDT Radio with the Greenfield brothers, Jay Greenfield and Lee Greenfield, the brothers. We did multiple seasons there as well. I believe we were into our 3rd season. So season 1 and season 2, we most certainly did. So 2 seasons at least with SVOH, Sexy Voices of Hollywood, and the UK's DDT Radio. So I did total of 4 seasons prior to online podcasting, essentially, and YouTube videos before doing this podcast here, 495 Casting Celebrities Worldwide. And this podcast, man, when I did it, I was like, you know what, man, fuck it, I'm going to do a new podcast. I had this epiphany. I was reading about so many people doing podcasts and being successful, and I said, you know what, man, I know getting into these types of business endeavors, business undertakings, you never know financially how it's going to work out. Any kind of business that one starts is a financial risk. And the information that I'm providing you here should not be construed in any way, shape, or form as financial advice or business advice or legal advice. In any way, shape, or form, full motherfucking disclosure. What I'm saying is that it's right out of the fucking textbook that anybody starting any kind of business enterprise, you never know, man, if you're going to make revenue or not. You just have no fucking idea. I can tell you that when Sexy Voices of Hollywood was put on Blip TV, BLIP, Bravo, Lima, India, Papa, .TV, Tango, Victor. Blip TV was a company that had existed for a while, and we decided, Yayoi and I, at some point, to go ahead and put SVOH, Sexy Voices of Hollywood, on Blip TV, and we started. It wasn't big fucking money, but there were some dollars, like a few, that started to roll in, as opposed to like 2 fucking cents. We were like, oh shit, like, wow, this online interview business model, the business model of interviewing folk online and having folks come on the show and interview them and just doing the talk YouTube video thing, right? Because, podcasting had been around for a while, but it was still evolving and still is, right? And so we were like, let's do it. So we did it. We were just like, fuck it, let's do it. And so we came up with the idea, and then we put it on Blip TV. Like, we started to see that there were like more than just like a few pennies coming in. And we're like, oh shit, this has viability. So with this podcast, I was like, yo, I'm gonna just roll the dice in terms of starting this thing and see what kind of revenue I can make with the podcast, the new one, where it's just improv. It's just me on the fly talking about urban culture, fucking music in general, hot topics, politics, gossip, clothing, fashion, just fucking whatever, man. Video games, movies, just whatever, right? I'm just gonna fucking do it because so many people have either A, already started a podcast, B, been talking about starting a podcast. Like, I have homies who I talk to in different states who they're in the process of creating their own podcast. Like, dudes I grew up with who run businesses and they do business and they make dollars and they are ballers because they're, West Coast hustlers, man. They came up hustling like we all did on the West Coast, man, and they're street certified, bona fide West Coast OGs. You feel me? And they're adults, family men and whatnot, man, and entrepreneurs, and they know how to make money. It's not like they haven't made money before. I mean, they know how to make paper and they know how to do it the right way. So they've been recently talking about doing podcasts, and if they say that they're going to do something like that, they're motherfucking going to do that shit. And I've been communicating with them directly about doing cameos on this show, coming on this show. You saw the homie, Mike Choi. He came on the show, actually episode 1, right? And then the homie Sendo, I've been rapping with him behind the scenes and whatnot. I actually talk about Sendo and how he came to be part of CA, the organization, lyrical organization out west, in a recent episode here on this particular podcast. And so we've been coordinating about having an East Coast and a West Coast show that mirror and parallel each other. So my point in all that is I didn't know, man, when I started to do this podcast, I'm like, you know what, man, who fucking knows? Like, I'm a realistic dude. Like, I talk about a lot of outrageous over-the-top shit because I'm a shock jock radio dude. Like, that's my whole style is, my mother, she was a sailor in that she was in the U.S. Navy, and she actually worked in naval communication. She was a communication specialist. She was with a top-secret organization within the Navy called Redcom, and I won't give the numerical designation of her Redcom unit because a lot of what they did is still classified to this day. And she's been retired, man, from the U.S. military. She spent 20 plus years in the U.S. military Navy, and I honor her and give her mad props for raising me as a single parent. Because my dad, who was also in the Army, man, I'm just being real, man, he wasn't really there, and around. And I chilled with my dad, man, in fucking the Midwest, man, back in the early 2000s and whatnot. But, my dad, who was in the Army for 20 plus years, was in Vietnam War, fought for America and served honorably. But growing up, man, he just, wasn't around. So my mother raised me, and she was a communication specialist who had been in the Army for 4 years. So she started off in the Army, and she's been stationed all over the world. My dad was stationed all over the world. But my mother, she had to learn computer programming back in the 1960s. So first of all, she was in a non-traditional role as a woman. Women are considered minorities, just like I'm mixed minority. Women are also technically minorities. So she was a woman in the military at the time and had to, for her job, become a computer programmer. In other words, my mother is a computer programmer in the sense that she learned computer programming and she had to use it in the military. So she learned Pascal, Fortran, and COBOL back in the 1960s, right? And she had to learn how to code and decode diplomatic communications because she worked in a skiff inside the walls of embassies. So she would be at U.S. embassies inside the inner woodworking. So, you hear the idiom, the phrase, coming from out of the woodwork, she was literally inside the walls of the embassy behind the tapestry, inside of the secret compartmented, infrastructure there. And she would code and decode both diplomatic communications and nuclear readiness information in the event of, some kind of fucked up shit going down. And so she would be stationed in Ketchikan, Juneau, Valdez, different parts of Alaska annually. She was also in Nairobi, Kenya. She was also in Mogadishu, Somalia. And she's been in many other countries. And again, what her unit did, her unit was called REDCOM. There were different REDCOM units, and each unit had a numerical designation, and I won't give out her designation because a lot of what they did is, to this day, classified. She worked at the TSSCI level for her career, and she retired honorably. But my point is that, so growing up, man, out west, though I lived on military bases and whatnot, I was also out in the streets with the homies doing stuff, and a lot of my homies, their parents had worked either in the military establishment themselves with the military or were a component of it as contractors, support to mission, and this kind of thing, aerospace, Boeing, you name it, different aerospace companies and so forth. So we grew up, man, out west, and so my buddies, man, we come from that Silicon Valley semiconductor, West Coast information technology, military industrial complex. And we have experience in that realm. And so when I launched this podcast, man, not knowing if, my friends from childhood or any fucking buddy in the world was going to even listen to my podcast, I'm like, you know what, man, I'm just going to keep my expectations low. I'll probably put the podcast out, tell a couple friends, handful, like, yo, man, I'm doing this podcast, just kind of fucking improv thing. And, man, who knows, man? This shit, man, maybe people I grew up with, they won't even give a fuck. They won't even listen to it. Maybe no one in the world will, save for like one or two people. I was pleasantly surprised when I logged in today and I saw the stats. I was like, oh, snap. Because I honestly, true, man, all my honors, man, in this world, I really thought it was going to take more episodes of me just doing some fucking improv shit like I'm doing right now for cats to actually start listening to the show. And with this particular program, there are major advertisers that are rolled into my podcast. Somehow, some way, I don't know, man. Like somebody's listening to the show. I've seen the numbers and the stats. So this show, even at episode 9, before this episode 10, this show is already gaining traction. Like I legit, like Lee fucking jit. I was like, wow. Like I'm not bragging or boasting. I'm saying I didn't know if it was going to be, and I didn't know that it was until I saw the stats tonight and I saw the number of downloads and I was like, holy shit, I must be doing something right. For real though. So what that tells you and shows you is that in terms of the American dream, like I straight didn't even script any fucking thing with this show. I just said, like people say, yo, I'm gonna do a podcast, and I actually fucking followed through on it. Now listen, what I'm saying to you is this, just so that we're clear. People have podcasts. You can find myriad podcasts. You can find countless, multitudinous, fucking who knows how many podcasts actually exist in the world. There must be some computer program that can track the data like podcast, some AI shit. I'm sure there's some estimate as to how many podcasts exist. What I'm saying in addition to that is significant and relevant is that there is also the other subset of the human population where people talk about doing podcasts and they haven't done it yet, right? They've been talking about it for a long time. Well, I fucking did it, okay? Because I'm like, yo, man, I'm not just going to talk about it because I don't just talk about it. I fucking be about it. So when I did it, I'm telling you as a man, on my honor, as a fucking man in this world, I'm telling you, on my honor, my reputation, I genuinely, truly didn't know and didn't think that I would have as many listens and how many downloads I had today. When I looked at the stats, I really thought, man, that I was gonna have to do a lot more if there were gonna be any at all. But that man, it just goes to show you, you can literally just get on the mic like I'm doing and just talk about some random shit, and all of a sudden you've got an audience, man. That is the American dream. That's business, because I'm getting fucking paid to do this shit. This ain't just something that I'm doing. I started doing it for fun, and I knew that you could make money, and I knew that there were people, making money just doing easy shit like I'm doing. I'm telling you, man, like, I've got advertisers rolled into this, major advertisers, and yo, man, I'm getting paid just to rap on the mic, just about ordinary everyday shit, man. And that comprises episode 10 of 495 Casting Celebrities Worldwide. And I almost, stumbled on them words, and I did, but man, fuck it. This show isn't about perfection. It's just about podcasting, man. And I'm your boy, One Sir Grove. You see, I ain't even gonna edit that shit out, man. It's just a show right there. Episode 10, 1.